Hello everybody and welcome to another list video here at Playing Board Games. I'm Justin and today I got the 5 strongest Forgotten Age cards voted by our community. I've done this twice before for Dream Eaters and I think Scarlet Keys, but this is a series where I put out a poll to all of our viewers, which you can find, P.S. you can find a poll to the next one down in the video description if you want to give input for the next video in this series. You can go do that now, where I ask everyone to give me their top 3 strongest cards from a cycle. I don't give any definition of what strongest is. I just ask, what do you think are the strongest cards from this cycle? Give me 3 of them, player cards in any form, and I take up all the things, I tabulate all the votes, and then I share for all of you the 5 cards that get the most votes in this series. This has been very fun for me because I like to see how our community compares to, one, my own opinions, but also just like to kind of just see if there's any like dark horses that might show up and get some good votes. I also like this because realistically, we're going to be entering a capstone on some of these cycles where it's less likely I'm going to make a series where I talk about all these campaigns as like an individual list video. I still don't know exactly what shape they're going to be because we don't really know what shape shape Legacy and Current is going to be. So we're not going to worry about that right now, but instead we're going to talk about the 5 strongest Forgotten Age cards voted by our community as we kind of look back at the Arkham horror card pool, specifically for the Forgotten Age. Let's dive in with our first one here. With 17 of 86 votes, we got Flamethrower. 4 cost, 5 experience, item, weapon, firearm in the Guardian class. Takes up the body slot and 2 hand slots. It uses 4 ammo. As an action, spend 1 ammo, fight. The enemy chosen for this attack must be the enemy engaged with you with the highest fight. You get +4 fist for this attack. If this attack is successful, instead of its standard damage, you may assign up to 4 damage among enemies engaged with you. Any additional damage adds to this total. So, I'm going to be real with everyone here. I have never thought that Flamethrower was that good. And I know it's probably because I'm just like a crazy person, but to me, 5 experience for a ranged it's not a ranged weapon, it's a firearm weapon with ammo, and it's so slot intensive. Like, I think obviously the card is like, it's efficient in killing enemies, right? But there's been so many times I've played or seen someone play Flamethrower, and there's always been that one turn where they were like, well, shucks, this is kind of awkward and how it's going to work. And in my opinion, I've never really been super, like, of the belief that if I'm going to spend 5 experience for something, I want it to only work some of the time. I'd rather, if I put 5 experience into my weapon, it works all of the time, just how the way I work it. I do think that Flamethrower is a strong card. Like, if I take my own personal opinions and thoughts out of it and just look at like the numbers of the card, I think it's strong. And obviously 17 of the 86 voters also think it's strong because it made into the top 5 here. I'm going to look at that. It actually made it to the top 5 by a big margin because the next closest was with cards with 12 votes. So like, it's a pretty big, like, I mean, like 5 sounds like a small amount of votes, but when you look at the actual results here, it's pretty high up there. So what is Flamethrower good at? Flamethrower is good at dealing with mobs of enemies, right? If you're surrounded, you can do it to just like eliminate a bunch of enemies at once and then like go through it. Like just kill the big guy and then start picking out the small guys, deal with the small guys, get the big guy. But the reality of this is that even if you're just fighting just one guy, Flamethrower is a 4 damage attack. So like that's a pretty like strong number, right? I feel like Flamethrower is actually like kind of at its apex when it comes time to be dealing with like big boss enemies or like the elite enemies that you're going to want to be killing as fast as possible and as efficiently as possible. Flamethrower also is good when you have like cards that care about ammo that you're going to be working with it, like Venturer or like extra ammunition, Swift Reload if you can run it if you're like Leo Anderson, right? I think that all these things are a nice way to take advantage of Flamethrower and you can kind of build around it. with that said, I don't disagree with it being here, but I have to just say that I've never been like impressed or blown away by Flamethrower, because I think it's like, I mean, they tabooed it, right? It cost 6 XP. I don't know if it still does today, but I know they tabooed it at one point. Maybe I'm just crazy, or like maybe it comes down to that I'm just wrong. Like I'm just dumb about my opinion of Flamethrower, but I don't know. But 17 people voted it in the top 5. I think it's a good card, but I've never been like blown away by it. I don't think it would be in my top 5 for Forgotten Age, which is another reason of why I'm super like into doing this series, because I can make these discoveries that I never would have thought about, and that, you know, like Flamethrower made it here for 17 votes, but I wouldn't have had it in even my top 10 potentially. I love level 0 cards. What can I say? I love a level 0 card. All right, let's keep this going with number 4 with Take Heart. This is a survivor skill. It got 19 of 86 votes, so 2 more votes than Flamethrower. Max 1 committed per skill test. You may commit Take Heart to any type of test. If this test fails, the performing investigator draws 2 cards and gains 2 resources. This card is also innate, which matters for a lot of survivor effects, and also for, like, you know, I think only Silas cares about innate trait right now, but this is a nice tool to give survivors card draw and resource generation. For a very long time within Arkham Horror, survivors weren't really great at this, and a big reason for this was the fact that their cards were kind of a resource that they had. So you can understand kind of like the design balance, where the idea is that you have to use your cards, like for example Wendy Adams, Ashcan Pete, you're using your cards for an ability, so your cards in theory should be harder for you to find copious amounts of, right? And then there's the Dark Horse build, where you spend your resources to make your stats stronger and do better with the Fire Axe. So in theory, your resources should also kind of be a little bit harder to get. We've seen some balance with this in the form of like Madame Lebranche before this, but Take Heart, when Forgotten Age came out, was a pretty big boon to the survivor card pool as ways for you to discover, sorry, not discover, but to like gain cards and resources in like a burst amount. It was like the most burst Survivor had. This worked really well for survivors because there was a lot of time where you could just fail a test and just get this done. Like say in the Mythos phase, they're like test brain 4, and you're like, well, I got 3, so I'm gonna throw a Take Heart on this and turn it into some good things. Or you could use it, for example, to trigger during an investigation to like be able to resolve a Look What I Found, which was really nice for survivors. It was a very cool play pattern. I do remember I had this interesting kind of thing with Take Heart where I would include it at the start. Like it was like an auto include. And then at a certain point, I was tired of wasting my actions to just draw cards and gain resources unless I could benefit from it. So I liked Take Heart when I was able to take advantage of it with a Look What I Found, but I wasn't really happy with it when I was just playing Take Heart to just turn that into card draws and resources. I didn't want to wait for the Mythos phase to get there. And this is actually something that's kind of funny to look at and consider how I even just approach everything in Arkham, where you'll notice that I talk a lot about how I prefer everything I do to be advancing the game state in some way, right? So it's like why I'm not like asset crazy. I prefer skills mostly and then events. I'll still play a lot of assets if the deck calls for it, of course, but a lot of the time I like to just not spend my actions playing assets, and instead I like to spend my time advancing the game state. So that was kind of where I had that issue with Take Heart. Take Heart, I think at this point now, is a pretty good survivor staple. I think that for me it still kind of lives in a spot where I'd rather put it in like specific decks as opposed to just always running it as survivor. I know there's also like but I'm also like I'm a little bit fricked up where like I know like there's a lot of people who like at a crossroads they're like, this is a busted survivor card, right? I don't know. I think it's a good card, but like I've never really like wanted to play it. And then when I do play it, I've always just been like, this card is fine. I actually never take the card draw myself. I give it to other people because for some reason I view the action as more efficient to do getting a clue and drawing a card that way, as opposed to just drawing cards that I'm gonna like passively get through while like just playing the game, right? And that's like why Take Heart's a little bit interesting for me. I think Take Heart has a lot of homes where it's practically an auto-include. I'll always put it in, obviously, Stella Clark, right? She loves the hell out of Take Heart. I think that also Preston, I'm very happy to play Take Heart in Preston, even though he does have a lot of good resource generation in Rogue, right? He has like a lot of that there. I think like the card draw that it provides, and also like the ability to just fail comes very naturally to him. Same with like Kelvin Wright, you know, where like Kelvin Wright can kind of tank the start of the game by just like getting there, right? And just like he's gonna have to fail a test, and just Take Heart can like make you stronger in the process. But it's not necessarily an auto-include for me. Even though I do consider it to be a Survivor staple, I don't think it's a Survivor staple for like my style of play. I do think it's like a Flamethrower. I understand why it's in the top 5, even though it's not really a top 5 for me again. But this is this is also why I like doing this, because I think this is really neat to talk about. With all that said, the top 3 I think is a very easy top 3 for the Forgotten Age. So let's go to number 3, Arcane Research. 21 of 86 votes. This is a Mystic permanent asset. Excuse me, it's a talent. When you purchase Arcane Research, suffer 1 mental trauma. After each scenario of a campaign, reduce the experience cost of the first spell card you upgrade before the next scenario by 1. So funny thing about Arcane Research, this was kind of pivotal to the Mystic class, because in the first few campaigns, specifically Dunwich and Carcosa, VP was not really like fallen out of every orifice like it is in some of the most recent ones. So that was totally fine for survivors. It was okay for okay for seekers. It was fine for guardians, and it was a little bit annoying for rogues, but they had Sharon's Obel that they were doing, and also they probably could survive. I mean, they were also rogues, but I mean, they started to get good with Path to Carcosa. But Mystics were always a little bit on the back foot when it came to this experience problem, right? Where the through line for a Mystic upgrade experience was you have your Shriveling or your Rite of Seeking, you then upgrade to the mid-level, and then maybe you upgrade to the final level, right? But in terms of like your assets getting, like your deck getting better, you had to spend so much experience into just those assets, right? Because those were the assets that did things, right? So if you wanted to get more experience by killing victory enemies or getting all the clues off locations, you needed to put that experience into your spell assets. The only problem with that is that it meant that your deck kind of stagnated around those spell assets, and things kind of became very samey. So Arcane Research was the solution, the Band-Aid solution to this problem. I call it a Band-Aid because it's not actually like healing the wound. It's just kind of like making things worse in regarding it, right? Because at that point, when Arcane Research came out, it was a big boon to Mystics, right? The 1 mental trauma didn't really matter that much. Mystics had some horror healing in the core set and in the Dunwich Legacy in the form of Fearless, which was a good thing for like just making them survive this Arcane Research trauma. They had like good horror soak on all of their allies, and what was most important is that they were able to upgrade their Shrivelings for the cost of only 1 XP, which means that if they earned, for example, 5 experience on the first scenario, rather than spending 3 of that on a Shriveling and then 2 of it on something else, they can now spend 1 of it on a Shriveling and then spend the other 4 on other things, right? Maybe another Shriveling, so then you can get up to the next one quicker. And it really just made it so that Mystics had that fantasy of scaling their experience at a better rate and a more kind of like, not equal rate, but like that fantasy of just having that super powered experience deck became to be more of an actuality for the Mystic class. However, with that said, it created some problems where then for the longest time, because there wasn't rotation, and this is why if there was rotation from the start, but there very rarely is ever rotation planned from the start for most card games, whether it be competitive or in this case now cooperative, they started to have to keep in mind that Arcane Research was there for every sort of Mystic spell asset that could exist, right? So what ended up happening is that now all experience cards for spell assets and spell cards, like events, are kind of balanced around this idea of Arcane Research existing. And then you also see that there was another issue where what if someone didn't buy Forgotten Age, but they bought other expansions. They don't have this Band-Aid solution to this big Mystic problem, so that's why we see XP boosting cards every few cycles, and why I imagine I'm going to wager in 3 cycles we're going to see another one in the Mystic class. That's just kind of like my educated guess on the idea of rotation, and also the issues that they did not solve with the revised core in terms of Mystic spells. I think Arcane Research is a very powerful card. I think it would easily be in my top 5, and I'm not surprised to see it here. This one is an absolute banger, and I think it's very important to the structure of the Mystic class as we know today. Let's go on to card number 2, Lucky Cigarette Case with 38 of 86 votes. So a very big jump from 3 to 2. This is a 2-cost rogue asset. It's an item and a charm, takes up the accessory slot. As a reaction, after you succeeded a skill test by 2 or more, exhaust Lucky Cigarette Case, draw a card. Wow! Let's go! Rogues love it. Rogues love this card. A lot of people, just like when they talk about the rogue accessory slot, everyone kind of just has this unspoken dialogue that this is a good accessory. Unfortunately, Lucky Cigarette Case exists, and unfortunately, that means that I'm probably going to have to take a Relic Hunter if I want to run this, or find other forms of card draw, and then you kind of have that dialogue with yourself where you're like, wait a minute, maybe there isn't card draw worth it in the form of Lucky Cigarette Case. This is just like drip card draw over the course of the game, especially with lockpicks that just came out in the Path to Carcosa, the cycle before this. It became one of those things where it's just like, this card was so easy to trigger. It essentially turned a lot of your rogue cards, like lockpicks or things that added your stats together, which notably, notably Safina Rousseau was very good at. It turned all those cards into basically also just saying draw a card, right? And that is something that was just a good way to get drip cards, which meant that the rogues were very competitive and they were less likely to run out of action like they were before previously. This is actually a very transformative cycle. Path to Carcosa and then Forgotten Age for rogues. They kind of dipped a little bit in Circle Undone, but that was mostly because Preston was their main rogue. And this is also why an example of why Preston would run, at least at the point that Circle Undone came out, would run Take Heart as opposed to Lucky Cigarette Case, because Preston ain't really going to be succeeding by 2, but he is going to be failing quite a bit. So like he would also run like Rabbit's Foot instead. However, with all that said, this was actually kind of like a reverse Rabbit's Foot, right? And Rabbit's Foot is fine. Like, Rabbit's Foot is a fine card, but Lucky Cigarette Case is a good card. Because let me ask you a question. What would you rather do? Fail a test and draw a card? Or pass a test and draw a card? Especially when you're passing that test, usually involves pushing the game state forward, because you're unlikely to just investigate at a empty location or fight an enemy that isn't there, right? Like, so that's like why Lucky Cigarette Case was so good, and it goes to what I was talking about previously with Take Heart, where, and like doubly so for Rabbit's Foot, if you are advancing the game and turning that game advancement into card draw, that is how you stay ahead of the game at a way that I personally think myself is more efficient than spending time drawing cards. Of course, your mileage may vary with that. I'm not saying that that is the end-all, be-all, and that is how it works, but that's just how it works for me, right? So like that's kind of like where my perspective comes in, and why I think Lucky Cigarette Case is a very strong card, very impactful card for the rogue set. You also can kind of see this in the design of like how their weapons were from the start. Rogue always had like Opportunist, right? Like even that skill. Rogues always had this space where like they wanted to succeed by X, and Lucky Cigarette Case is kind of like a big capstone on that. It's not actually like a build around for the archetype, but it's so much value for the archetype that it's kind of just insane to say no to. Okay, there's another rogue card that got number 1 here pretty handily, and that is Lola Santiago with 46 of 86 votes. That's over half. 43 would be half the votes. So Lola Santiago is not forming a minority government if this was an election. 3 cost, 3 experience, takes up the ally slot. Ally Wayfarer soaks for 2 and 2. You get +1 book and +1 foot. As a lightning bolt, exhaust Lola Santiago and spend X resources, discover 1 clue your location, where X is the shroud value of your location. There's a lot of reasons why Lola Santiago is good, and why, in my opinion, she is the strongest ally in the game. A big reason for this, when she just came out, was that she was such a synergy piece with, one, the investigator that just came out in this box, Finn Edwards, right? He actually can run her. He can't run if she was level 4. He could not. But what it also does, it's a very good synergy piece with lockpicks, right? So if we just like look at lockpicks, you're already planning on succeeding by 2 because it's kind of the name of the game, right? But then you look at like the investigators we have so far. We have Safina, who uses lockpicks at 6. We have Jenny, who uses lockpicks at 6. We have Skids, who uses it at 7. So that's good for Skids. We have Finn, who uses it at 8, right? So like these are all easy to succeed by 2. But what Lola Santiago does is Finn is now 10, Skids is now 9, Safina and Jenny are now 8. Those are comfortable numbers. Additionally, you pair this up with Lucky Cigarette Case, and now not only does your lockpick say, don't discard one of the uses on it, but also draw a card, right? Like, and that's really good. Lola Santiago was very good when she just came out. She was very impactful, and her ability was still very good, especially that just like free clues, like not free, but testless clues, turning them into resources instead is a very powerful ability, especially on low shroud locations. When it costs you 1 or 2 for a clue, 1 is practically free. Like that's an upkeep phase, right? Like that is practically just like nothing. 2, you have to think a little bit about. 3 is possible, but you're starting to get into the territories where it's a little bit harder. But as Lola Santiago has been in the game longer, a lot of people have realized that there's a lot of cool things you can do with her because her ability is a lightning bolt. And as we know, a lightning bolt ability is the strongest timing window in this game for a vast amount of reasons. This opens up a lot of things. Say, for example, you're using an old keyring, or a flashlight, or an otherworldly compass. These all lower the shroud value of your location. So during the test, when your shroud value is lowered, you can use Lola Santiago to get clues for cheaper. So now that 3 shroud location, it only cost you 1. And as I just said, that 1 was practically free. If it was a 4 shroud location, it's now 2, which again, you still need to think about a little bit, but you can do it. 5 becomes 3, which means that, yeah, you have to think about it a little bit, but now you don't have to investigate twice on a 5 shroud location if you're playing two-handed, right, or 2-player. And if it's a 2 shroud or a 1 shroud location, Lola just gives you a free clue while also giving you 2 very important stat boosts on top of all this. Lola Santiago is a fantastic card, and she's my number 1 from this cycle for sure. I actually have to like convince myself not to play Lola Santiago in a lot of my rogue decks because she is just that good. If, like, Delilah O'Rourke, she comes out in Dream Eaters, which we talked about. I think I don't know if she made the top 5 in Dream Eaters. I don't remember that list video because, to be honest, when I stop recording an episode and I start uploading it, it's like out of my head and it's gone into the ether, right? But Lola Santiago's ability to get clues is incredibly impactful, right? I will play her even if I am sometimes a fighter, if I'm using my foot, right? Like if I'm playing Keimani, I'm going to grab Lola Santiago, I'm going to grab Pickpocketing, and while I'm evading enemies, I'm just going to be discovering clues at the same time, right? This is why I think Lola Santiago is so good. She's just so freaking pushed for an ability. But at the same time, she feels reasonable, right? I don't feel like she should be 4 experience. I don't feel like she should be cost 4 or 3, right? I feel like all the numbers for her are good, but she was just like so... The stats are so relevant to so many rogues that it's like hard for me not to say that she is really good. And then her discovering clues can be really good. I do think you need to build around it, and I think it's ultimately a lot easier to build around today than it was when she first came out, be able to take advantage of like using the ability on more locations or like cheating shroud values. If they ever release something that readies an enemy, that readies an ally, I hope to God. I mean, there already is. There's the Guardian Inspiring Presence. It's very good with Lola. I'll tell you that much right now. So, like, thank God. Hopefully that stays in the Guardian class and doesn't enter into the Seeker or the Rogue class because then we'll have a really big problem. I think Lola Santiago is an easy number 1, and I don't disagree with this vote at all. I mean, she got 46 of 86 votes. That's an insane number. I think it's the highest we've seen in this series so far, which is absolutely crazy. So what I like to do at the end of this is I like to kind of just like go through, acknowledge some of the other ones that got here. I always flag the cards that got 10 or more votes. So Ancient Stone Knowledge got 11, Backpack 2 got 12, Stunning Blow got 12. So actually there weren't many. I do think that overall, while this is a good cycle of cards on the top end, I do think that it's a little bit, it's not the strongest cycle, right? Like, I think it's a good cycle of cards, as we obviously seen here, right? Like, these cards that we have here are really good, and a few other bangers. Olive McBride, Alter Fate, right? Scene of the Crime is very good. Take the Initiative. Like, you handle this one. These are all, like, great cards. Like, Winging It's here. Improvised Weapons also here. Like, these are all very nice cards, right? But I think the top end of this is very good for the rogue class. I think rogues were the easy winners from this one. I agree. Here's a comment from one of the viewers. Lots of good cards this set. Green was just really nutty. Yeah. A lot of people, like I said, there was a Backpack 2 only got 12 votes, but there's a lot of comments talking about Backpack 2. Yeah, Lucky Cigarette Case. Sorry. Special mention to Doom, the strongest basic weakness. No doubt there. No doubt there. Someone's saying they would have voted for Backpack 2, but that's only Return 2 cards. Good news. Well, bad news, your vote didn't count for that. But you could have. So in my head, so if you're doing Circle Undone, know that, sorry, when we do Circle Undone's not next. But when we do Circle Undone, you know that you can do the Return to Circle Undone. Same with Carcosa and Dunwich. The set was big for rogues. Yep. Seems like this cycle leaned more into enablers than payoffs. I agree, and it does have like some good staples that, especially at the time, wasn't really like super there. But then we have stuff like Stunning Blow, right? Like Stunning Blow is a great card, right? Yeah, it's a cool cycle of cards. Hold on, was this the moment Rogue became good? Great comment. They voted for Lucky Cigarette Case, Lola Santiago, and you handle this one. That's a great comment. Yes, I think this is the moment where rogues became like they got like more consistency in Path to Carcosa, but like I think Forgotten Age is when rogues started to get like those pieces where we see them be really nutty. Shout out to Cornered as well. A great card for that. Lola Santiago is possibly the best rogue level 1+ ally in the game. I still think, I agree. I think she's also the best ally in the game, as I said. Cool, that was a fun list video. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. Get down into the video description and start filling out for the next one. I'm pretty sure it's the Innsmouth Conspiracy. So expect to see, I don't want to paint a picture, Promise of Power. Faustian Bargain is probably going to be up there. It's going to be a very interesting one where I feel like it's going to be mostly level 0 cards for that one, which I think is going to... I'm actually very excited to see the results for that one. So fill out that survey. That video will come out in June. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Have a good one. And as always, a GG's.